Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session, Advanced FlexBook Editing. I'm Katie, one of the CK12 team members, and my colleague Lindsay and I will be running today's webinar.
Hi, everybody. Before we get started with the main content of today's webinar, we do want to make sure you guys are all comfortable with the Zoom webinar platform. So far, you're doing a great job. It looks like our chat window is quite active, which is exciting. But during today's presentation, we are going to use these two different windows, one for Q&A and one for chat. If you have a question that you want to make sure our presenters answer during the webinar, post it in the Q&A window. That helps us to keep things organized and know which are questions. The chat window is more of a place for a community conversation. We'd love for you guys to introduce yourselves just like you are. You're welcome to tell us maybe what you teach or where you're located. Just make sure that anything you're posting in the chat window goes to all panelists and attendees, not just to CK12 or to the panelists, because we want everybody to be able to see it. Also, while we don't anticipate any technical issues during our broadcast, if you're having any trouble with your video or your sound, please let us know in the Q&A or the chat window. All right, to get us started, I want to show you guys, we have a session resource page available for you. We've started making these, and we want you guys to have access to it either digitally, or this is a PDF that you can download and save. You can print it, you can put it in a folder to access later on. But the tiny URL on your screen is how you access it. It's tinyurl.com/CK12ADVFB for Advanced FlexBooks. We'll put that in the chat window here in a second as well for you, but that's just a resource page that you can look back on after this webinar to help you out as you're working on your FlexBooks.
Great, thank you, Lindsay, and thanks to everyone who joined us for today's session on Advanced FlexBook Editing. So today, in our core content, we are going to cover the basics. We've covered the basics already. Today is the advanced one, but in our Getting Started with FlexBook session, we talked about simple edits and sharing content. And if you missed that session, I highly encourage you to watch the recording or join us for a future offering, because that goes through some kind of general pieces as well. And we'll hint at them, but we're going to try to get into the advanced topics for today. So we're going to be covering, starting with incorporating, formatting, and citing images. That includes our licensing and different options for that. Then embedding videos, interactives, practice and quizzes, and more. That includes multimedia content, Google Slides, etc. And then special characters in the math editor, so using CK12's math editor and LaTeX coding. And then finally, enhancing your FlexBook, so talking about adding clarity with links and headers and tables and resources and all sorts of fun stuff. So our main goal is that by the end of this session, you understand all of the options that you have as you customize and enhance your content.
Okay, so before we really get going here, it would be great if we found out a little bit more about your knowledge of our editing tools. So we are going to launch a poll that you're going to see on your screen in just a moment. And we have a question for you, and there's lots of answer choices. Just take them one at a time. This is a select all that apply question, so anything that's true, just go ahead and give it a check mark. But we want to know, what experience do you have with using and customizing CK12 FlexBooks? So your options are, I'm new, I've used FlexBooks as is, I've made basic edits, I've added images, I've embedded videos, practice or quizzes, I've linked to other modalities, I've used the math editor, I've built a book from scratch, or I've used the new FlexBooks 2.0. So I'm just gonna let you guys concentrate here for a moment. Do select all that apply, please. All right, we see that a lot of you have locked in your answers, but we'll give you just another second to work your way through that list. All right, last call, and why don't we go ahead and share the results? Okay, interesting. So looks like actually the majority that wins this time is that I've used CK12 FlexBooks as is. So a lot of you have come to our site and taken one of our books and started using it, which is awesome. That's a great way to start. Another portion of you are brand new to FlexBooks. Like Katie said, we do a beginner version of this, the getting started with FlexBooks. So we might be jumping in a little bit far ahead if you haven't taken that one yet, but better to see all the advanced features now. You just might have to go back and review a little bit about that. A lot of you have made basic edits, and some of you have even done some adding of images, embedding videos, and all of that. So that's all very exciting. Thank you for sharing that information with us. Just a few basic points here as we're talking about customizing FlexBooks. You'll see some of this again in the webinar as we work our way through, and we're happy to go over it if you have any questions. But like we're saying, we're going to focus on the advanced components for this particular webinar. But as you're working with FlexBooks, you can always click Customize to start the process of customizing any of our books. And you can do this from your library. You can go and you can create a new modality from the library as well. So be on the lookout for that Customize button. You are able to delete and reorder any of our content. So you can click on the X to delete, or you can use that drag arrow to reorder different content within a book. Adding content and editing content, we try to make it as easy as possible. You can add content from within the editor or when browsing. You can use the pencil icon to edit any read, chapter, or book. As you can see, you'll get a drop-down menu where you can search CK12, you can insert a new read, you can insert a new chapter. And we'll show you how all that works here in a moment. And then sharing content. You can share our content via URL. You can use groups. You can use an integrated LMS, a learning management system, or you can use our Sharo planes. You can now also assign content directly to Google Classroom, just like you would do for your CK12 classes. So that's just a reminder of how awesome it is to be able to customize books on our site. Really, with a few clicks, you can start to make this book your own. So, Katie, why don't I turn it over to you to get into the heart of this webinar?
Great, thank you, Lindsay. So I think the first thing we're going to talk about is images in CK12. And I want to start by talking about the pop-up options you get when you want to edit or insert an image. So one note, some of this will change. We're going to update this image piece, but the basic parts are all going to be the same. It's just a question of where you're accessing them. So right now, when you open up, insert an image or edit an image, you get this general window where you can choose your file and upload it. I highly recommend that you upload a file and don't just point to a URL. Websites elsewhere change on a regular basis, not to mention ours updates. And so it's much cleaner and more consistent if you upload the image and you're not trying to repoint to the newest version of that image somewhere else. So I recommend you upload that. And then right now the second option takes you over to those image options. You get a figure image or an inline image, and we'll talk about that when we update them. Some options for text that you can include. And then for right now, the licensing information is on that second tab. It will be moving to the first tab when you choose to upload a file, just so that that is more apparent to you. But in the meantime, you still want to make sure that you're citing anywhere you get images, make sure that they're license appropriate. We license externally under CC BY NC licensing. So if you're unfamiliar with Creative Commons, I definitely would recommend clicking on that link to learn more about that license. And then our terms of use kind of allows you to use certain types of images on our site. And we want to make that a little clearer. So this will be getting updated, but in the meantime, we'll talk through some options as we go from there. And as Lindsay just previewed for a second, I'm going to actually steal this screen and start sharing so you guys can actually see what this looks like on our site. So hopefully you can see our homepage on CK12. This is our nice little demo account. And I am going to go to a book to start working from. So today we're going to talk about animals for a little bit. So I clicked on life science. I can explore concepts here, expand them and see anything there. And then I can go over to the FlexBook textbooks to access a book. And I'm going to stick with the life science concepts book for today. So we're going to open this up. And the first option, as Lindsay showed you, was just to click customize. So if I am editing a book, and I'm accessing a book from my library, that should say edit. But if I want to customize brand new, starting with CK12 or someone else's content, I would start from here and I would click customize. And I get bumped into this window. And so I'm just going to put for October webinar, just so I know what it is. We often recommend that you put the initials of your school or something, just so that you remember which book you're accessing if you happen to be looking at CK12's book or your book from there. And so we're going to actually now go into this content. We're going to spend some time on this later on, but we want to jump right into the content and editing pieces and talk about images. So I'm going to pick a section. We're going to go into Learn Behavior, and I can click that little pencil edit icon, and that opens up that particular section, and it will bring me into our editor. Now, you can choose to change the title if you want to, but if you want to keep it, you just click Save. It will save a copy of this in your library because you are now editing that content, and you will be good to go from here. So if we look in here, you can see there's some images here. Let's get a nice clean version of this screen. And I can keep working my way down. So I'm gonna pick an image just to show you how things might work out. We're gonna work out with this image today. So if I click on this image, and then I click on this little image icon up here, I can actually edit this. So I can change this. Notice how we have a file here. This is a figure, which means it's showing up kind of with that option with the little captioning piece. We have some information. This alt text is super helpful. That's that hover over text, so that if anyone is using a screen reader or they're looking for alt text for various reasons, they can see that information. So we recommend putting it in there. This one was licensed CC BY, so we'll show you kind of part of those pieces. And then it includes the links to the original photos that we're working off of. And so I can edit this image. I can actually make this, right now it's a postcard size. I can make it a thumbnail image, and you'll see how it shrunk. It's just this little teeny tiny image. I can edit it again and make it a full page image. And when we're talking full page, we're talking everything is based on width. So a postcard is part of it, a thumbnail is a little one, and a full page is the full width of that page. So for this image, that works really well. For another image that's down here, this one, if this one became the full width of the page, let's show you how crazy big that would end up being. So this image is huge. And if you were going to print this for any reason, I think that actually goes off the page because it's such a narrow image that when you expand it to the full width, you don't get the full piece. So just make sure that understand that your image options for your sizing is based on width. So we're going to put that actually back at the thumbnail it was, and we're good to go. So now it's a nice little simple image. Now, a couple other options. Let's say I accidentally deleted this image. And I was like, oh, I need to put it back in here. So I can insert an image from scratch, or I could just say, oops, let's back it up one step and put that image back in there. There we go. That image is right back in there. So I'm going to put it underneath just so you can see what it looks like in comparison and a different option. So insert image. I'm going to pick a file. And this is this image which we had. So we uploaded that image. I can preview it there. And then I'm going to go over to the image options. And this time, instead of doing a figure, I'm going to pick an inline image. And this grays out the options for that. I still can put some alt text in here, lion cubs and dogs playing. And the pixel width, I can adjust. So let's say I want it to be maybe 400 pixels wide. And then I need to put in the source and credit information. So both of these images actually came from Flickr. So I'm going to jump over to that for a second so you can see this. And this is some rights reserved. It means I need to attribute this. That's what that little icon means. So I need to make sure that if I'm using this, I'm citing it correctly. So I can share this. I can get the link to share this right from here. So I can copy that link and include that in my source information. And I'm going to have to put two of them in here because there are actually two images together. And then I want to make sure that I credit Katie accordingly. So I'm going to put Katie Hunt, and actually I've done this before, so it's going to nicely pre-fill the other option too. And then I'm going to go to the other one, and this is Bill Mulder. And same deal. I have to attribute this in order to use it. If you have questions on that licensing, you can click on it, and it says Creative Commons Attribution Generic. So that's something, if you're interested in learning more about, you can do that, but you want to make sure you're using licenses in there. And I'm going to pull this one as well. We're going to put those in there, and then I can insert this accordingly. And so this one right here is a little bit different. If I finalize this draft for a second, you could actually see what this looked like. If I kept it as a draft, I'd get bumped back into the editor menu. But since we're talking about that for a second, even when I finalize, I can always update and edit. The finalization just means that other people accessing this book can also see those updates. So if I go down here, you'll see the original one with the caption, and then this new image that I put in, which is not a figure image, so I might need to put something above or below it if I wanted more text there. So you definitely have options as you're working your way through. Because I already customized this, I can now directly edit this, and it will bump me back into that editor. So let's see if I think the system, there we go, is just reloading that part. So that's kind of your basics on image updates. I would say your biggest pieces, if we're going to go back into this for a second just so you see it, is that we recommend that you upload the image cleanly so that you have it. Make sure that when you're doing that, it falls under our licensing so that you can actually, we generally say ones that are attribution or public domain or something you created yourself are your best options. Anything else that has other restrictions on it doesn't really fit within our licensing. So you're going to want to make sure that you're working from there and that you put the source and the credit information. And that will be on that first screen shortly, but in the meantime, make sure to add it on there. And then we kind of went through some different pieces above that. We also talked about our licensing, as I just said. And so it's not super hard to upload an image. If you want to put your own stuff in there, just put your own name and stuff in there. But I'm going to pause for a second and just see if we have any questions that are coming in on images specifically before I swap over.
We have not received a single question yet. So just a reminder, our Q&A window is open. Now's a good time to ask any of those questions. You know, Katie, she just went through a lot of information and, you know, kind of a rapid fire demo here. She's making a lot of quick clicks. So if you need to see anything again, or if you need any clarifying questions, you can put them in the Q&A window. But Katie, if nothing's in there at the moment, then maybe I'd encourage you to continue on and we'll see if more questions come up as you continue.
Great. I do want to mention kind of one last thing while I'm still on here. The biggest difference between inline and figure images shows up if you were actually going to print any of your content. If you're using our new 2.0 books, those are more of an interactive environment and they're not printable. If you are using our current resources in our standard platform, you can print your customized content. And that's where that inline versus figure really matters. So the figure allows, might bump to the next page just so that you have as much text as possible on a page and you're not getting a bunch of blank spacing in there. But I'm a former math teacher, and if my images of graphs that went with the text above and below it moved as a figure to another page, that would be a big problem for me. So if you want your image, no matter what format you're in, to be directly below the text and above the text that it's kind of in between, then make sure you're using that inline option as you work. But most people are using online versions, and then it's just a question of if you want that captioning or not. Pretty straightforward there. So I'm going to cancel that for a second. And we're going to talk about some other options as we work our way through here. So let's pick a new section. I'm going to save this as a draft. So we can keep this as a draft. I didn't really change much, but that's fine. And it will bump me back into my editor. And from here, let's pick a new section. So another one on animals right now. And once again, we can just save this and it will keep that title and bump me into the editor. Now, for those that missed our basic ones, all of your standard formatting options are there as well. Italics, coloring, coding, everything else. But right now I want to talk about our multimedia options. So anywhere in our editor that you see this lovely khaki colored media box, it means that there's some sort of multimedia component embedded in here. If you click on it and then click on our little media icon, then you can actually preview it and see what it is. You're like, oh, that's this video I have on sled dogs. Awesome. So if, for example, I accidentally deleted that, and I can go over to this thing on YouTube just to bring it up. So we're gonna change this to YouTube, bring this up, and this is that actual video. Now, you have a couple of options for inserting a video within CK12 content. You can start by clicking and copying just the URL for it. So if you share on YouTube, hopefully most of you have done this, but if you haven't, right below the video is the share icon, the little arrow, and then you can simply copy the link to that YouTube video. So if I go ahead back to the CK12 editor, and I simply paste that link in, paste. Oh, so I can use Control V to just paste that in. It will actually embed that for me. So it gives me this nice little YouTube link and that part right there. So option one, if it's a YouTube link, is just to paste the YouTube, and our system should automatically embed that for you. Now, if you wanted to embed something else, you might want to actually use the embed code. Or if for any reason you were having difficulty getting this part or only had the embed code, we can delete this. And you can go straight to the edit media option. And this right here is asking you for an embed code. So I'm going to show it to you on YouTube first because I think it makes sense to a lot of people that way. But here, if I want to share this, you can then choose the embed option and copy all of this embed information. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste it in here, and then I can preview it and say, okay, great, we got the same video, and I can insert that way. So really, almost anything that has an embed code, you can actually embed in CK12 content. We do want to warn you that you are sharing this under the same licensing, so you want to make sure that if you, I know I had a teacher who said internally, I have Google slide presentations that have information for my classes from our book. That couldn't necessarily be shared on our content if it was on our website if it was copyrighted. So you'd want to make sure that you're only including stuff that you're willing to share with other people. Now YouTube, they can find it, so we can embed this and share it from there. But in general, you want to be sharing stuff that you know is going to stick around and that is allowed to be on YouTube, because if it is not, YouTube will take it off and you will lose that access piece. So option one is to embed videos. Another option is to embed practice or quizzes. So there's a couple of review questions here. How do mammals impact ecosystems? Describe different ways. I could actually go to this particular concept. So let's see, in the details tab for a second, I have my concepts. I could choose a concept node for this if it wasn't carrying over. Usually it will carry over from there, so we'll make sure that's up and running. But I can also say importance of mammals. So let me go to CK12. Pull up the importance of mammals concept, which I could navigate through in life sciences, or I could just jump straight to it. Here's my read, here's some assessments. This is life science. So we can jump to biology or we can jump to life science. Let's filter to this option. And then if we go into any of these sections, we can jump to all modalities. And it will bring me to that page. And right here is the practice that goes with this. So if I click on the importance of mammals practice, and then in this nice little ellipses at the bottom, I can actually pull the embed code for practice. And I can do that for practice, and I can do that for any quizzes that I might have made. And if I open them in my library, I'd have the same options. So if I click on this embed code, I could copy all of this. I could go back to this importance of mammals thing, scroll all the way down to the bottom if I wanted to add it and say, try this digital practice. And then I could click on the embed code right here, edit media, and you'll actually see this is what it would look like to students. They would get this little preview option. For them, it would say practice. And I can add that digital practice to here. So that's one way to do it for practice. Quiz, I would access via my library, and I would pull the same embed code. But please note that this is simply sharing that practice with your students. If you want a score report for that matching practice, you would need to assign it to your students as well. So just keep that in mind, that anything you want score reports for, you need to assign, but otherwise you can simply add it in and share it accordingly. Now, we recently just released the option to embed sims. So if I go over here and I go to ck12.org, I can scroll down and I can access all of my simulations here. And I could, let's say we're sticking with animals, so maybe we'll talk about ducks for today. And within this option, same deal, kind of that flipped ellipses, which is vertical, I can actually pull the embed code for this. So I could include that, try this digital practice, and then maybe and this simulation. And once again, I would choose to embed this. And if I preview it, this is what it would look like for students. They would get this option to launch that simulation. We're going to insert it in here. Now, our sims are currently available for physics, and we're starting to launch our chemistry ones. I know this is life science, so there's not the option for a simulation. But in our interactive Plix, you will eventually have that same option to pull that embed code. So for today, we'll be sharing via a link in the next section, but you can eventually do that via the link to embed a simulation. And then kind of the last option from here that we actually brought up at one point in time, someone asked about Google presentations, which I hinted at. So if I went over here, these are some of the dogs that used to hang out in the CK12 office. Some of them, their owners have moved on, but they're some of our favorites. So here is a great little Google slide presentation that I created. And if you wanted to share this, you would actually go to File, and then Publish to the Web. And then here's your embed code. And so just like the other ones, I would copy that embed code. I would go back to here and say, and for fun, CK12's dogs. And same deal, insert edit media, paste my embed code. I could preview it for a second and make sure it was showing me what I wanted and insert it. And so as you're working through here, if you want to preview anything, just click on it as you're working. If you want to embed anything, you need that embed code, or for YouTube, it will automatically go from there. And I'm going to finalize this so you can see what it looks like. If I go ahead and do that, and so now we have our text, we have a picture, we have this video that we embedded again, we have some practice, a simulation, and even our Google Slides presentation that we can click through. So all of these are different ways to include media. As I said, soon you will have the same option to pull Plix embed codes, and there are life science Plix, so that will be super helpful for this particular book as well. But I'm going to pause again for a minute and see what other questions we have at this time and go from there.
Hey, we've got some questions now. This is exciting. The first question is, I am a math teacher. If I create a graph using software like GeoGebra and I create a graph and create an image, do I have to worry about attribution?
So what I'm going to say to that is that you need to check the license on anything that you are using. So some things, like a lot of our Plix include our GeoGebra Plix, so you'll see some of those within our site. But in terms of like a blanket answer to anything on, can I use this, whatever, I generally say you should check the attribution requirements or the terms of use for something that you're using. And then you want to make sure that you cite it. So if, for example, I created a graph using Desmos or an image on GeoGebra, I would note that this was made from GeoGebra kind of as the source. And then the credit for the person who actually made it would be my name in that case. So you do still want to make sure that you're citing and telling us where it came from. And you would need to check the license for any particular thing outside of CK12. If you're pulling content from another place on CK12, then note what book it came from or what that looks like. Or if it's an image already uploaded, look at the original source code. So if you look down here, see how this has all of our image attributions. So if you were going to use one of those images again, I recommend that you use it cleanly, go to that original site, make sure that you're pulling it accordingly and citing it correctly. But there are too many different licenses and terms of use for places you could pull information. So you would need to check the terms of use or license requirements from anywhere that you're pulling it from.
Okay, so the next two questions are a little bit related, and they both come from Beth. Asking, so if the video is on YouTube, is it safe to assume it's covered by your CC license? And then the next part of that was, if I create my own video, can I upload it straight from my computer, similar to an image, or do I have to load it to YouTube first and then embed? And I think our use of YouTube will kind of explain this here, Katie, with the copyright.
So first of all, you're embedding an image from you're embedding a video from YouTube, so you're really just kind of creating a window to that. It would be like linking out to something else from there. So you, it's not really being hosted on our site. So that's the part in terms of licensing. You're just putting a window out to YouTube. And in terms of the licensing on that, you go by YouTube's licensing for videos from there. So make sure that you are looking at that on there. I've seen teachers try to use videos that are on YouTube, but that are very clearly a Disney video or video owned by a network that they made for a science reason. And lo and behold, shortly after, YouTube realizes it's copyrighted and they pull it down, and then they have this like can't access this video sign. So generally, you want to make sure that what you're pulling is probably good to go from YouTube. So that it will stick around, but you are basically putting a link to access YouTube. So the licensing for YouTube is their licensing. With that, if you create your own video, we do not host videos on our site. You can upload an image to our site, but notice that there wasn't an upload option for a video. You would need to put it on something else like YouTube and then embed that option from there. So hopefully that answers your kind of YouTube licensing and options for uploading in different pieces, but you're right now, like we're putting a link elsewhere. I was saying in terms of the licensing for Google Slides, that because you're making that public, you want to make sure that anything that you're sharing from there is acceptable, because it's usually coming from a Drive place, as opposed to YouTube that has its own clean licensing and options from there. Otherwise, you're accessing pieces. It would be like linking to kind of practice elsewhere, where you then needed to log in and access something. So just make sure that if you're creating your own stuff for your classroom, that if you're including it on CK12, it makes sense and it works within our license, and you're not inadvertently sharing stuff that you shouldn't be sharing.
Okay, and then a question that's in our chat window right now is, when we add the embed code, can we change the size of image or video in the code?
Yeah.
How much can they control on CK12?
So you can. So if I go back up here, if you know how to update embed codes and you want to change your width and height on those options, you are more than welcome to do so. I've had to do it once or twice where YouTube, somehow or another, the embed code that I had was actually more than 600 or 800 pixels wide and was falling off the page. So let's see if this will load. But yeah, when you click on that embed code, you can adjust it. So if I go back down here and I click on this embed code, right now it's doing a width of 560 and a height of 315. So I could adjust both of those. You would want to make sure that you did it proportionally, so that if you were, shrinking in half, both of them were shrunk in half, and therefore it wasn't kind of really, really wide and all of the graphics were off. But you are welcome to adjust that. Basically, that's probably the one thing you'd be adjusting. I wouldn't change a lot of the rest of the content in there, but you are more than welcome to change the width and height.
And oftentimes it depends on where you're grabbing the embed code, that you'll have options on that end. Before you copy the code, you'll be able to select some parameters for it before you copy it over. Okay, well, our Q&A window is empty again. So Katie, I'm going to steal the screen back. And I know we have a few videos that just short, like minute and a half style videos here of some folks that we have met. Katie and I occasionally get to go and visit our users and see them in the classroom. And I'm going to show you a video of Jonathan Woods from Tullahoma, Tennessee. and Jessica Favela Casillas, who is a chemistry teacher in El Paso, and they're going to talk about some CK12 FlexBooks. So here you guys go.
My favorite thing about it is you can update, change content, adapt to what you need for that classroom. If I have some content on there that I think is not working, or the students don't like, or that I don't like, that it's just, for whatever reason, it's not working the way I thought it would, I can find other stuff and use other stuff to change those chapters and change the format of everything. I can also upload videos anytime I want to there, upload any pictures that I need on there, any other resources, you know, as needed. So that's what I like the most, but I can kind of form it the way I want to.
We were asked to reorganize the FlexBook that was already there and adapt it completely to EPISD and our curriculum, our scope and sequence. We added things that were student-friendly, we added videos, and I think that was a really good experience because as a chemistry teacher, I knew what my kids were needing as far as a textbook, as far as content went. And I could rely on the textbook to have videos and interactives and any kind of visual that I thought they needed that they couldn't get in a standard textbook.
Okay, so that's just a couple of the folks who we've met as we do some traveling. Now we're going to talk about CK12's options for including special characters and math formatting.
So we want to, before I steal the screen, I just want to bring this window up for a second so you guys can see the whole math editor. And this is really helpful whether you're a science teacher or math teacher, or you simply want to add extra formatting for special characters. So both the special characters and the math editor menu will allow you to do that. And right here you can see two different ways to use the math editor. So one is that you can use the drop-down options like that, where it's pulling up a Greek character and I can insert different options. Or below that is actually the LaTeX coding for that. And our system works in one direction. So if you're using our drop-down menu, it will pre-populate the code. If you start messing with the code because you know LaTeX, the drop-down like image options at the top will no longer show up. So just be aware that if you're going to start playing with code, that you should know code. And if you don't know code, then feel free to use our drop-down options. So I think with that, I'm going to steal this lovely screen back from Lindsay, and we're going to do some work. We have launched our 2.0 FlexBooks. So just a reminder that these are not printable in any way right now. They're very interactive. But I do want to show you that the editing is really the same. So we're going to use the same book, the life science book in 2.0. So I'm going to click try it now, and we're going to flip over to our 2.0 options. And then I am going to access our life science for middle school in 2.0. And the same deal, I can just choose to customize this book right here. And it will open that editor just like it did before. So life science book for middle school, for webinar, October 2018. So there is my title. I can change that. And then I can go into any section that I want to edit it. So let's pick a section in here. Gonna add that in this piece. And we're gonna actually edit a section that might be useful to have some math included in that. So this is Hardy-Weinberg. It's a genetic principle. And in this particular option, you can see multiple choices. So I can scroll down until they're talking about this model. And we can put some information in here. So we can start by putting any special characters. So this special character menu, I can just click on. And you get all of your standard options. You can use, 3-dot leader, kind of like an ellipses, copyright sign, pi. There's a different pi in here. There's your pi option. All sorts of different options for your special characters that you want to do. So that's pretty standard. Most of you guys have seen that in word processor. So feel free to use those. But then we can also use this math editor. So right now I don't have any equation in here. And so I'm just going to click on this little X in curly brackets and open up my editor menu. So if I wanted to use that drop-down option, I could click in here and I could say, okay, I want a function. So f of x in here, and then I want it to be equal to something, and it's going to fill it in, and then I want something raised to a power, so I'm going to do that part. And in this case, it would be p squared, because that is part of the model, but we also have this kind of x part here. And so if I start playing around with this part down here and filling it in so I actually get the correct part, then I lose that preview option. So just be aware. I can still kind of put some options in here and add them down, but I no longer kind of see what's happening. But not a problem, because I can always preview it. So if I click preview, it's saying the probability that I get that piece is based on there. So you have your formula that you're putting. Now there are 3 options to insert this particular piece. So I'm going to start with it as block math, just so you can see what this looks like. You can tell it's nicely centered. I'm going to add that, and we get this nice little centered option. If I click on that again, it will open up that particular equation, and it doesn't even give you the drop down because it's already using the code piece. So just be aware that you can still kind of add to it. And now we have this plus sign, but you're not going to see the little preview kind of open boxes for you to fill in. If you wanted that back, you would need to start a new equation. But I can do that. I can insert this and I can make this inline. So let's preview this and see it inline. And it actually shows up here. Let's see, I could then say, is the formula for, and it would stay within this particular option. And I could even put content right before it. So here is the formula. If I was going to do this as align at, so let's try one more option. Align at would left align it on a new line. So see how it brings it down to this new option. So those are your options kind of for different pieces in terms of putting formulas in there, in terms of clicking the drop-down options or putting LaTeX coding in. And then if you want to write your own LaTeX code in there, just be aware that our system limits some options for like colors or things like that. But anything that you want in there that might not be preset in your dropdown is an option if you know the code for it or if you want to look it up. I know the last time we were doing this webinar, someone was asking about chemical symbols, and we found the code for that. And we also were talking about different options to kind of work their way through there. So it is one of those things where, let's just open this up one more time where you get everything. You can build most equations directly using our dropdown options. You're just going to want to take some time to figure out where things are. So, you know, here's your square root options, fractions, power functions as you work your way across. And if there is something that you think we're missing, we do routinely update this and add in other options, add in another Greek letter, different things like that. So feel free to let us know and we'll see if it makes sense for us to add that in there so that you can easily use the dropdown instead of the code. But I think with that, are there any questions on the math editor being used in here?
We don't have any questions at the moment, but I'll keep an eye on the Q&A and let you know if any jump in there.
Okay. So I think with that, we're going to talk about some of the other formatting options for here. So if you notice down at the bottom, we have this nice little summary. And if you wanted to put in different formulas here, we might want to put it in the summary, or we might want to put it even up here and really highlight this formula. So one of my favorite options is actually an element box. So that's this nice little element box right here. And it basically just distinguishes that text. If you grew up using a math textbook that was printed, you probably had these nice little shaded blue boxes with all your formulas in here. So I can cleanly put this in, and I can add in explanations. I can add in these formulas. I could use my drop down again, or I could use, if I know what they are, I can actually just write them in. There's one option, add that in. I can add another one and just keep kind of working my way down. But what this does is it takes that option and it really truly highlights these different formulas so that they're working and you're able to see them, and students will kind of catch their eye. It's not just general text as they're working their way through. So if you have a great formula or a theorem or something you want to pull out, that element box is a great option. You might want to say, let's explore something else. Let's include, check out this Plix. So our Plix is our other interactive. You can access those by going to ck12.org/Plix or just ck12.org and scrolling down to all of our Plix choices right here. And if you're in the Hardy-Weinberg concept, just like I was kind of in the importance of mammals concept, any Plix would be available there as well. So I can go to Hardy-Weinberg. I can even search, see what we get. We got a great little Plix right here. And eventually, you as a user will be able to find in this nice little ellipses again, next to the share me, that embed code. So you could actually embed this Plix, either just this interactive piece or the whole Plix. But for right now, you'd want to use the whole URL at the top, and I can simply copy that. And I can hyperlink this so that my students can access it cleanly and use my insert edit link. And then they would actually link to that particular Plix. So that's an option for hyperlinking and adding pieces. If you have a real world application or another web page you want to include, that's an option. I know some teachers have other resources that are licensed to their students and they want to share a book, but they can't include that direct content in our site. And so they sometimes put a link to that website within a book, and then a student will link to there and they'll log in based on their login credentials, and then they'll access that practice or something like that that they might have access to otherwise. So that's definitely an option as you work your way through there. We could also create a table. So this is talking about genetics. So let's say I wanted to put in the summary kind of a table to talk about genes. So here's a nice little table. We have some options. So we have our parents versus children. So this one is B. And then let's say this. So then you could write kind of your options as you worked your way through for genetics. And within here, you can click on it and right click on here and you can actually change some of the table properties. So it automatically added the second row when I tabbed or the third row when I tabbed past the second row, but I can add a border. I could add a table caption or a summary. I can make this inline. The summary is kind of just this overall thing. So genetic offspring, etc. So feel free to add those tables and play around with them. Because a lot of our system was originally designed with the ability to convert both digitally and in print for some of our text, there are limitations to this right now, but you're welcome to use kind of all the options that are available within those tables. And then maybe you want to add a vocabulary section. So before our summary, we're going to talk about vocab. And so because I was in summary, it actually detailed the same kind of header piece. So if I click on this vocab and I click on formatting, this is a section 1 header. I can add a section 2 header to make it kind of a subset of something else or standard paragraph, etc. as I work my way through. If you are in a header, notice how it grays out media. So if for some reason you're getting a grayed out media option, it's probably because you're in other formatting. So just make sure you're in standard paragraph options. And then from here, I could put in a definition list. So here's my term and here's my definition. So let's talk about alleles. And then I can put in my definition, variant of a gene. And then I can use my increase and decrease tab to kind of bounce back and forth. So gene pool. And then we're going to get there. So all the alleles, etc. of the individuals of the population. We can write that in. Or I could simply click enter and kind of insert another one, and it'll keep working my way down. So, you know, you have your standard bulleted list, a numbered list, but this is an extra piece because a lot of science terms have a term and a definition or math vocabulary. So you're welcome to use those pieces. So I think that takes care of most of these. If this screen's a little too small to edit in, you can actually expand the editor to the full screen and then kind of see what's happening here. Or I can shrink this back down. And you can work your way through editing options. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is the other tabs that you can add pieces to. So your resource tab allows you to upload files. So let's say you made a worksheet that you wanted to include with your students for this particular section, and all the content on there you owned or you created yourself, or it came from CK12, so it wasn't some other licensed content you couldn't upload. You could upload a resource there. You'll find our answer keys in a lot of books in the resource tab, so that's definitely an option to work off of. The next tab is the details tab. And here you'll see a description, some learning objectives. I could actually put vocab in here. You'll see attributions, subject, different grade levels. And in here, it's the other one, we had a concept option, and that should show up as well, but I could always add that back in. But this is the primary concept, the Hardy-Weinberg concept that we're working off of. So it has all of that information in there. So you want to make sure that you're leaving that citation in there for whoever wrote that content, and you're including the pieces in this part. And you can add all these other information in there as well. For 2.0, so remember this was one of our newer books, we have one additional tab, and that tab is our related tab. So if I click on related, these are other modalities that I wanted to add in. And this is the Plix I linked to, but it's actually included directly within this as well. And I can add another modality. So I could add a study aid. So this is a quick little resource. So let's kind of add that one in. I think that might be useful. Or I could remove one that I didn't want. If let's say I didn't want this video, we're gonna remove that one. And then I can finalize this draft, and it will bump me back into that particular section in 2.0. And you'll see this section in a little bit different environment than we did for the other one. So instead of having a tab for details, your details are under options, and that pulls up all the same information we had before. It's just in a different place. This is that related tab that doesn't exist in our original books. And that allows students to directly access these resources right from there. So that can be super useful if you want to include content. We've added it to all our new 2.0 books. If you're using a book in 2.0, you can add your own content. And then highlighting and resources and settings, you can kind of change a bunch of pieces. But the content itself, the actual text itself, it still has the same example for an element box there. It still has my vocabulary listed here and a little table there as we're working our way through, and even this link to this Plix. So I could access this Plix directly from the link. It would open it up. There's that particular Plix. Or I could go back. And I think that's taking me back. Let's go back to the page I was on, not to all of Plix. And I could go back to that related, and I could access it straight from there. And in that part, it opens it up in a new tab for the Plix. So you'll see those different pieces as you work your way through. I want to take just another minute to talk about information at the book or the chapter level. So if I go back to this particular book, which is right here, I can choose this book. I can edit it because this is already a book that I have. But if I wanted to find it, I'm just going to show you how to find content for a second. So if I am back in CK12 and I click in my library, anything I edited will be in there. So you'll see two different things. You'll see the book we created at the beginning of this webinar, which is a FlexBook textbook. That's one of our original books. And then this new one that we were working off of for 2.0. And it's noted as FlexBook 2.0. So that kind of reminds you the different versions that you're in. But if I click on this and I click edit, I'm bumped into the same situation. At this point, we're not tagging any content at the book level, so there's no related tab. But I have the same resource tabs and details tabs at the book level as well. So it has that information. For a 2.0 book, when I click on this, this information doesn't actually show up because it's really just kind of a bucketing system. So notice that it says they can be used to group concepts, but this content's not available. So you want to make sure that you're not putting any content in the chapter level for a 2.0 book. You can for a 1.0 book, and that's totally fine. But all of that content is available and accessible to update and edit from there. And I think that's kind of where we're good for now.
Okay, well, we still have an empty Q&A window. Hopefully that means that everybody's getting their questions answered. Now's a good time to post any last questions as we sort of get ready to wrap up here. But Katie, I know you wanted to talk to them about publishing, so let me share my screen. And we will do that. Let's see. All right, here you go.
Thanks. So we definitely wanted to talk about this just before we go, because there's a couple pieces in terms of, okay, well, I've made this great book, and now how do I share it? Or how do I publish it? And does it matter? So the first thing is, in the original book that we were talking about, on that left-hand side of that book, under resources, is that option to publish. In a 2.0 book, it's under that same choose option. So if you go on that on the left side, you'll be able to see that window and work your way through. So that's kind of the technical how you do that piece. And there's that little image for choosing it within CK12. So if you own it, you'll, in addition to the assign and edit, you'll also see the option to publish that content very soon. It's coming out, I think, in the next week. Then why? So you can access your book by sharing the URL, but you can more easily access your book if you publish it, because then it's available to be found within search and different places there. So it's really kind of an easy access option, regardless of what account you're in and whether or not you can remember that link. That might be a great reason. Plus, we've provided a lot of free content. A lot of other schools have provided free content. So we encourage you to add to that set of resources for others. So then really what happens? So the biggest difference between something that is published and not published is that you can search it on CK12. So you want to make sure that published or not, your license is still the same, because once you share that URL with anyone, they could reshare it. So you would need to still be in that license. But when you publish it, you can access it via search. The other benefit for publishing is that on the schools page, you can add any published book to that schools page. So if your department or district or school is creating a bunch of different resources together, you can put them all on a school page, and then students could access all of their materials in one place, but you would need to publish it to do that. So I want to do one little final note before I turn this over to Lindsay, and that's our tools and apps page. So you can access this at the bottom of any CK12 page, but also through that direct link. And that has information on our Sims app and FlexBook app and Practice app. The 2.0 environment isn't fully synced to those apps yet, so just make sure you're aware of that piece. But you can access our old books on our FlexBook app, and you can access the Sims on that Sims app, so you can download those offline and not have to stream all at the same time for students. And if you're looking for your own book, you can kind of open it from a browser into that app, all sorts of options. And then for any integration, there's more information there. And we do webinars on that, but you can also find out information on that page.
Okay, so as we approach the hour mark here, I want to do some wrap-up information for you guys. Some other useful information could be found on our overview page, which is ck12.org/overview. If you're interested in learning more about our other offerings beyond our FlexBooks, we recommend you check out this page. You're going to find a brief description and some short videos of teachers and students using our other resources, like our concept-based learning. You learn about that philosophy, our adaptive practice, our cafe, lots of good stuff on the overview page. Also, I want to make sure you guys know about our webinar schedule. We have 3 coming up here in the month of November. If you're using Canvas or Schoology to manage your classes, join us on November 8th to learn about our integration with those platforms. Then later in November, you can learn more about our new and upcoming interactive math FlexBooks. And then finally, we'll have the Advanced Practice and Assignments webinar called Customizing CK12 Adaptive Practice and Assignments after Thanksgiving. You can register for any of these webinars at ck12.org/webinars. That's also, that webinars page, that's also where we will post this video sometime tomorrow if you need to review this video as well. We shared this at the beginning, but don't forget to check out the session resource page. It's a tongue twister. That handout. We put the link in the chat window earlier, and we'll do it again if we didn't already. A note about our Certified Educator program. Each summer, we run an intensive professional development program for educators who are looking to become CK12 certified. And to do that, they attend a series of 5 or more live webinars and then watch 2 on-demand sessions and complete matching assignments for all of those sessions. If you are interested in becoming certified during the school year, again, it's mainly a summer program right now, but we are working with people like yourselves who attended a live webinar and would like that to count toward your live session requirements. You'll get a link to the matching assignment for today's webinar in your follow-up email tomorrow, and you can find out more information about the program at the link listed on the screen, which is ck12.org/certified. If you decide that you want to do the whole program, we can issue your certification and documentation at the end of the whole program. But if you are somebody who is in need of a certificate documenting your participation in today's webinar specifically, you can email jumpstart@ck12.org and we can issue a certificate for you if that is helpful to you. And then before the end of every webinar, we encourage you to answer a short questionnaire to give us feedback on the content and presentation of today's webinar. We're always looking to improve and we value your feedback. The link to do that is another tinyurl.com and it's CK12 webinar 1819, like this school year. So thanks again to everybody. You can always reach out to us. Our technical support at ck12.org can answer questions for you. We are on all of the social medias. If you want to see what was happening this summer, you can do hashtag #CK12 certified. Feel free to tweet at us or like us on Facebook. And that's it. We're really excited that you joined us today. So if you need to go, thank you for attending. And Katie, we'll see if there are any last questions before we sign off today.
Yeah, so there's no questions in Q&A. So if you have any, make sure you get them in there shortly or email us at support. There is one more in chat that I'll just answer verbally right now. I don't think we need to go all the way over to a screen, but it asked if we have teachers who've created formulas in the math editor elsewhere, can they copy and paste into here? If you open the editor elsewhere and copy the code, you can paste that code into a math equation on that same page. That's probably your cleanest option. But yes, you're welcome to take all that code from a previous equation and paste it into that particular new option. So I think we are out of questions. We'll give you another maybe 30 seconds to let us know you have any, and otherwise we will sign off and say goodnight.